How you doing? This is Damian Robinson, and my learning project is about one-on-one technology and its effect on student academic achievement and motivation. I was published in the Contemporary Educational Technology in 2016. Pages 368 to 381. It's written by Jennifer Harris and Adele Al-Battana, both of Illinois State University, and Muhammad Al-Battana. He went to Jordan University of Science and Technology in Jordan. So this was a quantitative study using fourth graders at an elementary school in central Illinois, Title I elementary school. Title I meaning that most of the kids come from low-income households. They wanted to determine whether or not one-to-one technology had any true impact, any true effects on the academic achievements of the students. And the secondary goal was to study or determine rather whether or not one-to-one technology could also motivate the kids to learn. And that was the primary reason why this particular study caught my attention, because they were looking to study if it helped motivate kids to learn. And often in those types of environments, the kids are not necessarily less intellectually talented. It's the motivating factors. They have other needs. They want to eat. They want to be clothed. They need shelter. So going to school isn't a primary motivation. Looking 10 to 15, 20 years in the future isn't necessarily something that kids from those types of environments look to do. So what would motivate them to learn? So the article began by talking about kind of the history of, not the entire history, but the more recent history of how we got to the point of where we are today in terms of how we're educating our kids and the reasoning behind. And it started talking about President Bush's No Child Left Behind policies. And what struck me is the sentence. It says, since No Child Left Behind's inception, high-stakes testing and accountability has beleaguered school districts across the nation. That's a pretty tough sentence. I have a few friends that are teachers in public schools in Pennsylvania, New York, and Maryland, and for the most part, they talk about just basically their hands are tied. I want to say it like that. They say that it is in their best interest to make sure the kids pass these tests and go ahead and pass them to the next grade, even though they may not be prepared. So, beleaguered school districts across the nation, like I said, it's a pretty tough sentence to me. The article spoke about the financial constraints that school districts have. Not every school district across the country is on equal ground in terms of financial stability. A lot of schools in rural areas and urban areas lack the infrastructure, and to put the infrastructure in place in order for these kids to utilize technology has a high cost component. There was a study, I have to find it, and I'll put it to you like this. I was made aware of a study in the late 80s, early 90s, I believe, as I was told, that in Compton, where they had antiquated books and the schools were overcrowded, and then they lacked qualified teachers and teachers that cared. There was, over time, a group, an ethnicity of students that did well nationally in the SATs. And there was a study as to why. It was, I believe, the Vietnamese that lived in Compton held their own against the upper crust of, the Northeast SAT scores, kids in the Northeast, and there was a study as to why and how. And what was shown was that this particular ethnicity, culturally, they did everything together. So when the kids went to school, and the family had a business, they ran the business. When the kids came home from school, they ran the business. But what they would do is everybody would cook together, and everybody would do the schoolwork together. That was the uncles that, the 70-year-old uncles that weren't in school, the 60-year-old fathers, the 14-year-old brothers did the 16-year-old sister's work. The 16-year-old sister helped the 14-year-old brother. The 55-year-old mother helped and the 14-year-old brother. So everybody in the family, everybody in the household participated in the schoolwork. So in the study, topic tests in math, discovery education, assessment results, and attendance were used to determine whether or not one-to-one technology had a positive impact. The topic tests were derived from Pearson and Vision Math Series, and that has been adopted by the Bloomington Public Schools. The math series was a Common Core state standard aligned and teaches the language and lessons to meet the learning standards. The topic tests were used as an assessment to gauge the mastery of math skills. So there were 6 total topic tests given. So topics 1 through 3 looks like they scored significantly better in the one-to-one implementation classroom than the traditional classroom, while topics 5 and 6 did much better in the traditional classroom compared to the one-to-one implementation. So in conclusion, the one-to-one technology did not do better overall than traditional classroom settings. In some instances, it was better. In some instances, it was not. So it shows that one-to-one technology is a definite help and can be utilized in some areas, but not all. Also, with regard to does it help affect student motivation, it says here that the attendance records were not what were expected for the study. The hypothesis for the study was to determine if one-to-one technology would affect student academic achievement and motivation. However, the data from the study showed the technology was not a particular factor in students being in attendance at school. So evidently it doesn't help with motivation.